It is the understatement of the century to say that there's a lot going on in America these days. So I just wanted to start by saying I'm going to do my level best to keep things in focus and bring you all the information that really matters so we don't get overwhelmed in times that can only be described as overwhelming. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to tonight's episode of Mary Trump Live. What a day. But thank you so much for being here. As I said at the top of the show, we've been trying really hard today to stay focused on what you guys need to know, and make sure that the essence of what we need to be focusing on does not get lost in the noise and the churn and, the fact that we care. All right. So let's start with the terrible tragedy, the plane crash in the airspace just outside of Washington, D.C., in which all passengers on both the commercial airline and the military Black Hawk helicopter were lost. We have a lot of information from the hearings to get to. We had Senate hearings for Tulsi Gabbard, Donald's pick for National Director of National Intelligence, Kash Patel, Donald's nominee to head the FBI, and the second hearing for Robert Kennedy, who has been nominated to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. But again, I want to start with the plane crash. This is what has unfolded since last night and today. Take a look at this clip.
Washington, D.C.'s fire chief says the rescue mission in the Potomac River has now turned to a recovery operation.
At this point, we don't believe there are any survivors from this accident.
Both the helicopter and the plane crashed in the river.
Video obtained by CBS News shows what air traffic controllers would have seen. The Black Hawk at the top of the screen appears to move directly in the path of the jet operated by PSA Airlines.
We don't know why the military aircraft came into the path of the PSA aircraft.
President Donald Trump is pushing for an explanation.
We'll find out how this disaster occurred and we'll ensure that nothing like this ever happens again.
The Army says the Black Hawk helicopter was on a training flight with 3 service members on board.
This is the first major commercial crash in the United States in around 16 years. Officials are hoping the black box flight recorder helps investigators figure out what happened.
Before we get to Donald's press conference today, I just want to let you know that we have not altered his voice. This is very serious business, and he's in charge. So let's hear what he had to say in exactly the way he said it. Now, of course, his way of getting to the bottom of this tragedy had nothing to do with the actual investigation or an assessment of the available data. Instead, he spent much of his time casting blame in several directions. Watch this clip.
We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, they have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence, and we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. and they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level.
Literally nothing that man just said is true. I'm sure there was a lot of pushback from the members of the corporate media in the White House press room today. It wasn't just Biden and Obama who were in Donald's crosshairs. He doubled down on his appalling DEI rhetoric that its non-existent role in last night's tragedy. Just a reminder, we do not know the cause of last night's tragedy. And he actually signed a memorandum to undo the quote-unquote woke policies that he falsely claims caused the crash. Here's a clip.
Sir.
Thank you.
Second, for your signature, we have a presidential memorandum titled Immediate Assessment of Aviation Safety. In light of the damage done to aviation safety by the Biden administration's DEI and woke policies, what this presidential memorandum orders is for your Secretary of Transportation and FAA administrator, in this case, acting FAA administrator, to basically ensure that we are actively undoing all of that damage, that we are assessing how much damage was done, and that we're ensuring that people hired within the FAA, in keeping with your memorandum of January 21st, are only the most outstanding, capable people for the jobs that they're being hired into.
In other words, competence.
Yes, sir. Elevating competence over everything.
Okay, I know I've often charged you with not being shocked or surprised by anything, but I confess that I continue to be mystified with just how many people are willing to debase themselves in service to that man. Understandably, a group of Black lawmakers were appalled by Donald's words and actions relating to DEI. And here's their statement, which reads, "It is our hope that the outpouring of condolences and support from people across the nation will bring solace during this season of bereavement." That was Representative Yvette Clarke, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. She continues, "However, the opportunity to fully focus our sympathies on those who are mourning and who may not have even retrieved their dearly departed was marred by a truly disgusting and disgraceful display of racist political prognostication," unquote. Later this afternoon, back at the White House, Donald was asked if he'd visit the crash site. Here's his response.
Do you have a plan to go visit the site or meet with any of the
I have a plan to
responders?
visit, not the site, because you tell me, what's the site? The water?
Or to meet with the first responders down there?
I don't have a plan to do that, but I will be meeting with some people that were very badly hurt with their family member, obviously, but I'll be meeting with some of the families, yeah.
Why would he bother? Why? And also, why would we want him there? All he would do is disgrace the site. And I'm not entirely sure why any family member would want to meet with him after today. But that, of course, is entirely up to them. As I mentioned at the top show, a lot going on in the Senate. I want to recap the main points, the alliances, the dangerous rhetoric that were all featured in today's Senate hearing. So buckle up. We started with Tulsi Gabbard, who's Donald's pick to be the director of national intelligence. She faced intense questioning, as she should, because it is one of the most important and powerful jobs in this country, but also because of her background. Let's take a look.
Before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States. Accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet.
Wow, she Googled herself. Yeah, it is possible simultaneously to be the puppet of 5 different puppet masters when they're all aligned. Anyway, Gabbard was picked up a key endorsement before the hearings even began from Senator Tom Cotton, the Arkansas Republican who leads the committee. As you can imagine, he was very objective. Take a look.
I'm dismayed by the attacks on Ms. Gabbard's patriotism and her loyalty to our country. For instance, Hillary Clinton has smeared Ms. Gabbard, calling her an asset of a foreign nation. Let me remind everyone that Ms. Gabbard has served in our Army for more than 2 decades. She has multiple combat tours, and she still wears the uniform to this day.
Well, that's terrifying. You know who else served in the United States Armed Services? Lots of people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th and were convicted, tried, and found guilty of crimes against America. Things got heated when Democrats took over questioning. Now, the hearing, which lasted more than 2 hours in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Gabbard faced very direct questions about her past statement on foreign affairs, as well as on her qualifications to oversee the nation's spy agencies. Because again, this is a very, very, very important position. And those things that Cotton referred to as lies and smears are things for which we have actual documentary evidence. Take a look at this clip.
Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. Her critics pointing to her lack of experience in intelligence. She's also made statements in the past blaming the U.S. for the war in Ukraine. And in 2017, she met multiple times with now ousted Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad and voiced skepticism that Assad was using chemical weapons against his own people, despite overwhelming evidence from the U.S.
Yeah. Yes. As I said, documentary evidence. Members of both parties repeatedly raised the subject of Edward Snowden, including the Republican Todd Young of Indiana, Susan Collins of Maine, and James Lankford of Oklahoma, as did the top Democrat on the committee, Mark Warner of Virginia, who said he had serious doubts about Gabbard's judgment. Let's watch this clip.
Attention to the egregious civil liberties violations that were occurring at that time.
Ms. Gabbard, Ms. Gabbard, I ask you a question. Please give me the courtesy of responding. You said the reforms now make you supportive. What can you cite? Which reforms?
There are a number of reforms to include getting rid
in the new law,
that,
right?
That all of you and your wisdom.
Ms. Gabbard, my time is getting short, but I got to just tell you, after the reforms were passed into law in April of 24, you went on Joe Rogan's podcast in May.
Gabbard was also asked whether Snowden, whom she's previously said must be protected as a whistleblower, was a traitor to the United States. Instead of answering the question directly, it is literally a yes or no question. She repeatedly fell back on a statement that Snowden, who now lives in Russia after fleeing the United States, broke the law, but would not agree with lawmakers who condemned him as a traitor. Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat of Colorado, was unwilling to accept her response. Bennett's been excellent in these hearings, by the way. He said, that is not a hard question. He raised his voice, as I wish more Democrats would do. Watch this clip.
Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, I will also repeat my answer. He broke the law.
You said earlier that you were offended by a question that my colleague from Kansas asked. We think it was his duty as somebody on this committee to fulfill his responsibility to advise and consent. We are not here to be a rubber stamp for the President of the United States. So let me ask you again, do you believe, as the chairman of this committee believes, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will work with you to make sure that there is not another Snowden-like leak.
Media. It's not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United States. This is when you need to answer the questions of the people whose votes you're asking for. to be confirmed as the chief intelligence officer of this nation.
Well done, Senator Bennett. After the hearing, there was a closed-door hearing because nearly 100 former national security officials signed a letter back in December criticizing the nomination of Gabbard, who called for these closed-door hearings so the Senate could review any government information about her. The officials urged the Senate, quote, to carefully evaluate whether she's equipped for the position. Several of Ms. Gabbard's past actions call into question her ability to deliver unbiased intelligence briefings to the president, Congress, and to the entire national security apparatus. Following her trip to Syria, for example, Ms. Gabbard aligned herself with Russian and Syrian officials. Those officials included the vicious and murderer dictators Vladimir Putin and Bashar al-Assad, who murdered millions of his own people. After the hearing, Dems appeared frustrated by Gabbard's failure to answer questions about Snowden sufficiently. Here's a clip of Democratic Senators Mark Kelly and Mark Warner expressing their concerns.
I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad regime, but today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It shouldn't
is
be.
certainly
And
not
I
in our
understand,
interests.
I appreciate.
Yeah, she really knows how to obfuscate, doesn't she? I mean, credit where credit is due. Kelly told reporters that the nominee, declining to say whether she believes Snowden was a traitor, raised concerns for him, as it should for all of us. The Arizona senator said it's pretty easy to say the guy is a traitor. Yeah, I agree. Gabbard said that her heart was with her commitment to our Constitution and our nation's security. And she wanted to make sure that there's no future Snowden-type leak. Again, a bit of obfuscation when is Edward Snowden a traitor is a very simple yes or no question to answer. Warner also expressed similar concerns about Gabbard's answers on Snowden. Quote, she couldn't call Edward Snowden a traitor. She didn't even refute calling him brave, unquote. The panel will decide whether to advance her nomination to the vote of the full Senate. But let's just take a second to look at just how incredibly pivotal and powerful the Director of National Intelligence is in keeping our country safe and keeping our government informed about attacks from abroad. The DNI oversees the entirety of the country's intelligence apparatus, including the Central Intelligence Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency. If confirmed, Gabbard would be in charge of developing the president's daily brief, which is a compendium of the most important intelligence the U.S. gathers every day. But she's going to have to find a really big font and a really good illustrator because Donald's not going to read it anyway. Now, Gabbard's nomination could be advanced with a neutral or even negative recommendation, but it isn't clear how her nomination would fare on the floor under those circumstances. If all senators are present and voting and all Democrats oppose Gabbard, she can still, and this is in front of the full Senate, she can still afford to lose the support of 3 Republicans, which is exactly what happened with Pete Hegseth when he ended up with a 50-50 vote and the tie was broken by alleged Vice President J.D. Vance. I just want to point out before we get to Kash Patel how dangerous it would be to put somebody with her incredible inexperience and lack of qualification for such an important job, but also somebody who clearly has divided loyalties, or maybe not even divided loyalties, who seems to have greater loyalties to countries that are enemies than to the United States. Now, that's dangerous in and of itself, but we can't lose sight of the fact that it will also impact the way our allies communicate with us about their classified information. The Republican Party is not the party of national security. I don't know if it ever was, but it certainly is not now. Kash Patel's hearing was over 5 hours long. So we're only going to touch on the highlights and more likely lowlights of what happened today. Here's a quick look at his opening statement.
The priority of the FBI, if I'm confirmed, will be to ensure that our communities are protected and safeguarded and our children have parks to play in and not needles to walk over. The way we do this, we let good cops be cops. We let law enforcement and we provide them with the tools necessary and resources they need to get after violent crime. The second way we do this on equal track is aggressive constitutional oversight from Congress. The public trust can only be restored if there is full transparency, and I am committed to that full transparency.
I think he's at the wrong job interview. Kash, this is not a Fox interview. This is to lead the FBI. Anyway, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island then summed up in incredibly scathing terms. Thank you for stepping up, Sheldon Whitehouse. We've been worried about you. What he argued Patel's nomination could mean for the future of the FBI and the nonpartisan enforcement of the law. He said, quote, "There's an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices," unquote. Yes, there's that pesky documentary evidence again. Take a look at this clip of Patel's being asked about revenge within the department.
Regarding his publication of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, "The manhunt starts tomorrow," and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to his political enemies. Is that you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
Senator, I had nothing to do with the creation of that meme.
Is that you reposting it, was my question.
And that's me at the top.
It doesn't get better. Senator Chris Coons asked Patel to comment on controversial comments he made in a podcast with Steve Bannon. Again, that alone should be disqualifying, in which Patel stated he believed the next leader of the FBI should empty out the Hoover Building, or the Bureau's headquarters in D.C. Patel, in his remarks to Bannon, said the FBI building should be made into a museum of the deep state. He sought to water down the remarks, noting he was only hoping to make the point that large numbers of agents concentrated in the capital region should be assigned to more offices in the interior of the country. During questioning from Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, Patel would not unequivocally commit to ensuring that FBI agents who worked on special counsel Jack Smith's cases against Donald Trump won't be fired. Let me rephrase that. FBI agents who worked on special counsel Jack Smith's cases investigating alleged crimes Donald Trump committed in front of our eyes won't be fired. Blumenthal said Patel failed the first test to see if he would be truly apolitical. Quote, "If you can't commit that those FBI agents will be protected from political retribution, we can't accept you as FBI director." Senators like deGrasse sought to rebut expected questioning from Democrats of past quotes from Patel that appeared favorable to QAnon conspiracy movements. "I have publicly included in the interview provided to this committee rejected outright QAnon's baseless conspiracy theories or any other baseless conspiracy theories," Patel said. When asked if he has an association with Stu Peters, a known conspiracy theorist and a Nazi, Patel denied knowing who Stu Peters even was. Watch this clip.
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Stu. Always love coming on your show.
Kash Patel, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Stu. Appreciate it. Thanks, Stu. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Stu. Appreciate it. You've got a great show.
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi. There are more. Ted Nugent, it goes on, list goes on. I'm just asking, when it comes to your association with individuals, why are so many of them in this category?
My association, as you loosely define it, is by appearing in media over 1,000 times to take on people who are putting on conspiratorial theories and to devour them of their false impressions and to talk to them about the truth. That is something that I will always continue to fight for, Senator.
I really appreciate you and love being on your show, you little Nazi, but I have no idea who the fuck you are. Yeah, that was very convincing, Kash. So convincing. And then, because he's not just a staunch ally of Donald Trump, right? He's the sycophantiest of the sycophants, and he is a conspiracy theorist as well as being a Nazi. He was acting deputy director of acting director of national intelligence during Donald's first term, at the very last part of the last year of that term. And he has said that it's his mission to, quote, annihilate the so-called deep state of, quote, unelected tyrants inside government. Do not let the fact that he was briefly deputy director of national intelligence lead you to believe that he's qualified in any way, shape, or form, because he wasn't qualified for that position either. Senator Adam Schiff of California asked Patel repeatedly if he could say that Biden won the election in 2020, which Patel refused to do. Watch this clip.
Can you say the words, Joe Biden won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden was the president of the United States.
You know, I'm going to stay on this. There's a difference. I can say the words, Donald Trump won. I don't like to say it, but I must say it.
Does Adam Schiff have a body double? I mean, that was not Adam Schiff, but that was his nameplate, so I'm not entirely sure what happened there. But listen, Melania has a body double, so it's okay. Anyway, he cannot admit that Donald lost resoundingly the 2020 election because otherwise Donald would never nominate him to be leader of the FBI. And then we have to take a look at his involvement in the now defunct, thanks to personal pocket judge Aileen Cannon, Mar-a-Lago documents case. Take a look at this.
Did you claim that Donald Trump declassified all the documents at Mar-a-Lago? Did you claim that?
In what proceeding?
To the public, ever. Did you tell anyone that Donald Trump declassified all the documents at Mar-a-Lago?
From publicly available information, President Trump issued a declassification order on a variety of materials.
No, I'm just asking you, did you tell the public, did you tell anyone, did you make the claim that Donald Trump had declassified those hundreds of classified documents that were at Mar-a-Lago? Did you make that claim publicly?
From my best of my recollection, I said President Trump issued a declassification order to a large number of documents.
Yeah, and were you present when he declassified all the Mar-a-Lago documents?
Senator, I'm not saying he declassified all the Mar-a-Lago documents. I said President Trump declassified a large number of documents, and I would hope this committee and the rest of Congress would want to get those documents to the American people.
Mr. Patel, before a president or anyone declassified documents, wouldn't you want to know whether making the public would cause sources to be killed? Wouldn't you want to know that before you just declare they're all declassified? Wouldn't that be the responsible thing for a president to do?
It was the responsible thing for us to do. That's why we declassified the Nunes memo.
And did Donald Trump declassify?
And no one died.
And did Donald Trump ever ask any of the agencies who produced those documents whether declassifying them would put people's lives at risk? Did he ever do that, to your knowledge, Kash Patel?
I don't know that he didn't. Do you?
First of all, Senator, just get your nameplates right. It's very confusing. Yeah, he is not going to answer a question in a way that is going to get Donald upset. So good for you, Adam Schiff, but it's not happening. And I do think it's important for the American people to see just how obstructionist and immature this person is. Here's a clip of Patel once again going on about revenge tactics. Take a look at this.
And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're gonna come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
Senator, that's a partial quotation.
But it's correct.
In part.
Senators Grassley and Schiff questioned Patel about his opinion of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Patel mostly glossed over his past comments that have suggested law enforcement was partly culpable in the attack. I mean, he's gone so far to say that it was a deep state false flag operation of like the FBI and Black Lives Matter and the anti-fascist movement. In answering, though, Patel did struck kind of a different note from the one we've continually heard from Donald, who, again, in one of his first acts in office, pardoned almost 1,500 of the rioters who violently attacked police and Congress. Earlier in the hearing, Patel had sought to distance himself from the violent rioters who were part of that attack, and he claimed he had nothing to do with the recording of the group singing the national anthem that Donald has played many, many times. Boy, did they deserve that during the 2024 campaign. But Schiff presented Patel with a direct quote from one of his appearances on Bannon's podcast, where he stated, quote, "So what we thought would be cool is if we captured that audio and then, of course, had the greatest president, Donald, recite the Pledge of Allegiance," which Donald does not know the words to, then went into his studio and recorded it, mastered it, digitized it, and put it out as a song, unquote. Adam Schiff then lays into Patel. Watch this one.
I'm looking at you. You're talking to me.
No, look at them. I want you to look at them if you can, if you have the courage to look them in the eye, Mr. Patel, and tell them you're proud of what you did. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles. Tell them you're proud of what you did, Mr. Patel. They're right there. They're guarding you today. Tell them how proud you are.
That's an abject lie, and you know it. I've never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these men and women, as you know,
you
my entire
glorified
life,
it in song,
and I did not make a single dime out of it.
In song. Well, let me.
How about you ask them if I have their backs, and let's see about that answer.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Patel.
Bullshit. The idea that little man has been put in a position to treat a United States senator with that kind of contempt is grotesque. I'm sure that will factor into the Republicans' decisions on whether or not to advance him out of committee. I was being sarcastic. To close out the hearing, here again is Senator Adam Schiff putting it all in context. Look at this.
I would just say we need to think about where we are in this moment. We have a new president. He's fired prosecutors who investigated him. He's investigating other prosecutors, or his Department of Justice is. He's fired inspector generals who might hold him accountable. And this is just the start. And as FBI director nominee, he's chosen someone whose primary qualification, in my view, is his willingness to say yes when everyone else would say no to whatever the president wanted, to say whatever he wanted, to do whatever he wanted. That's why he is sitting here. I mean, look at the people who held that job before Mr. Patel, the stature of the people that held that job, the qualifications of the people that held that job. And how can any of us think that his background, his qualifications hold a candle to the people who went before him? How did we get here where we are defending a nominee like this, who makes songs with convicts who attack law enforcement? How did we get here? And where are we going? History is littered with democracies that lost their freedoms and didn't notice it while it was happening.
We know how we got here, and we know that this is entirely part of the project to dismantle our agencies from within by putting in leadership positions at those agencies the most corrupt, the most sycophantic, and the most unqualified people Donald can find by scraping the bottom of the barrel. We need to be blunt about this. If Kash Patel gets in to lead the FBI, which, by the way, is already being staffed by some of Donald's personal attorneys, will become part and parcel the sole property of Donald Trump to do his bidding to get revenge on whomever he pleases. Just to clear up that confusion, it was Senator Welch who usurped Adam Schiff's seat, causing all of the confusion. All right. Well, there's some good news today. It was another tough day for Bob Kennedy. Just as yesterday, there were some tense moments during his testimony at the second hearing. I want to start with this clip.
And show me a single statement I've made about science that is erroneous.
Today, Kennedy was pushing back more to defend some of his more controversial and egregiously incorrect views and statements that listen, this is not a flash of the pen. He's been saying these things for decades. He also, as is the wont of any of these Republican nominees, failing to answer simple yes or no questions on where he stands on several vaccines and other programs, which left Democrats absolutely exasperated. So far, no Democrats have said they will support his nomination, and his answers during this confirmation process seem unlikely, well, I'd say almost certain, to change that. So when asked about the life-saving benefits of the COVID-19 vaccine, for example, Kennedy continued to cast doubt, saying he doesn't think that, quote unquote, anybody can say that vaccines save millions of lives. This is so absurd that it's insulting. There were several tense moments in particular between Bernie Sanders, and Sanders accused Kennedy of supporting Andrew Wakefield. Wakefield is a discredited author of the controversial and retracted 1998 study linking vaccines to autism. The confrontation became personal, with Kennedy referring to Sanders as Bernie in another show of respect, and both sides shouting over political contributions from the pharmaceutical industry. Play the clip.
As I understand it, dozens of studies done all over the world that make it very clear that vaccines do not cause autism. Now, you just said, if I heard correctly, well, if the evidence is there. The evidence is there. That's it. Vaccines do not cause autism. Do you agree with that?
As I said, I'm not going to go into HHS with any preordained.
I asked you a simple question, Bobby. The studies all over the world say it does not. What do you think?
Senator, if you show me those studies, I will absolutely, as I promised to Chairman Cassidy, I will apologize.
That is a very troubling response because the studies are there. Your job was to have looked at those studies as an applicant for this job. All right.
Okay, so this is the guy who for decades has been claiming that vaccines are linked to, falsely claiming that vaccines are linked to autism. And then today, in his job interview to become head of Health and Human Services, a position which would put him in charge of the health of all Americans, he says that he hasn't read the studies that debunk those claims. That's just outrageous. And also, I mean, it's outrageous that he would say that in the first place. There have been, I don't know how many, but almost 100% of peer-reviewed studies debunk the ridiculous claim that vaccines are linked to autism. Kennedy says it anyway and just admitted that he hasn't read any of the studies that contradict him. Okay. Sanders, also on a roll today, challenged Kennedy over his alleged praise of Wakefield, despite the fact that Wakefield's work was discredited. But Kennedy stuck to his stance of advocating for quote unquote good science, which apparently means for him whatever he thinks it means. And he refused fully to align with the mainstream consensus on vaccines. This is a very, very, very dangerous man, which we talked about yesterday. And again, he's not just in charge of things like vaccines and communicable diseases, which he apparently thinks is the job of the Secretary of HHS to spread, not contain. But he's also has a lot to do with how Medicare is handled in this country. Senator Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire asked Kennedy a series of questions about parts of Medicare, over which Kennedy seemed not at all to be prepared.
So what is Medicare Part A?
Medicare Part A pays mainly for primary care or physicians, and then Medicare.
No, so it is about Medicare Part A is seniors coverage for inpatient hospital care. What's Medicare Part B?
For physicians and doctors. Medicare care Part D.
That is coverage for outpatient care and home health. So what is Medicare Part C?
Medicare Part C is a program where it's the full menu of all the services A, B, C, and D for Medicare.
It is Medicare Advantage, which it's the private insurance option for seniors on Medicare. So, Mr. Kennedy, you want us to confirm you to be in charge of Medicare, but it appears that you don't know the basics of this program. So let's turn to Medicaid.
The basics.
No, I had to correct you on several.
Hey, I didn't get it wrong.
Mr. Kennedy, my time is limited, and I hope the chair will give me
Is
a couple of more minutes.
Senator?
Yes, Medicaid.
All right, because you're giving me very little time to answer one.
Let's turn to Medicaid.
Okay, listen, man, it's not a Chinese menu. You don't get to pick and choose what column Medicare covers. You didn't know the answers. You know what would have saved a lot of time? Saying, I don't know. I mean, I don't know either, but I'm not trying to become Secretary of Health and Human Services. What a train wreck. What a disaster. Throughout the hearing, Kennedy, of course, reiterated his position as being pro-safety and pro-good science. Again, terms that seem to have no meaning for him whatsoever. But he struggled to address effectively direct questions about his controversial past positions on vaccines and health policy. His hearing remains a battleground for both Republicans and Democrats who are uncertain about his nomination to head the Department of Health and Human Services, to which I say, are you kidding me? If this guy gets one vote, he'll get more than 40, but still, the idea that he's going to get more than one vote is a sign of just how far the Republican Party has fallen. Okay, thank you for sticking with us. This is, again, it's not just that there are lots going on, it's very dense stuff. And we appreciate your, hanging with us. So I'm going to end. This is sort of a personal emotional support moment, because it's been a really tough day. I've been trying to figure out why. I mean, obviously the plane crash is just devastating, but we live in a world where things like that happen more often than we would want them to. And, in personal and collective ways, we're dealing with a lot now. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of bad news coming at us. And then, we've been told that this is the worst aviation disaster in over 20 years. And I wanted to know what the last one was. And it was on September 12th, 2001 in New York City, in right outside of Kennedy Airport. And this was a day after September 11th. I think over 200 people died in that plane crash. People on the ground died. And it was a massive tragedy following an utterly unthinkable one. So, I lived in New York at the time, and I like, okay, that's why this news today struck me so hard. And again, not that it wouldn't have, but there obviously, having experienced September 11th and September 12th in New York, having friends affected. And so anyway, what does that have to do with the emotional support movement? It has to do with this, because we also saw today Donald demonstrate for the billionth time what an unempathetic, hideous person he is, right? So that got me thinking about how are we going to keep doing this? Sometimes it kind of feels unsustainable. And I mean, this has been one of my mantras for all of my life. At least I'm not them. At least I'm not them. And on days like today, that actually, I mean, that's never nothing, right? But on days like today, when I see what people in my family are capable of, and I know that I am not capable of those things, that helps me. And what helps me even more is knowing that all of you and all of the people who make the show happen and all the people who support us aren't like them either. And that's extraordinary. And that means a lot. And we need to own that, and we need to embrace that. And we need to hang on to that, especially on days like today, but always. So thank you. It's been a very long day, but thank you. So I'm going to get to some of your comments. Bear with me, please. I also did want. I also did want to mention that there's a gremlin in my computer. I have no idea what just happened, but it wasn't the NSA, as far as I'm aware. I wanted to mention that today, the just phenomenal, awesome Marianne Faithfull died at the age of 78. What a woman. Guilt is one of my favorite songs. So thank you, Marianne, for all of your music and all of your attitude. All right. So from Wilma, Mary, how many undocumented immigrants do you think Donnie has on his properties? The hypocrite, dozens for sure. Dozens, but I've no doubt they're the best people, and that he should be able to, do that. Donna, Bernie Sanders was the only one who didn't take AIPAC money. Okay. Good to know. Which, by the way, good for him, but also let's do something about Citizens United, shall we? From Stephanie, I'm a paramedic and therefore am more qualified than RFK. Yes, Stephanie, you are. You are more qualified than nobody. You know what? I'm more qualified than Kennedy because I believe in science, and I don't think that children should die needlessly from totally preventable communicable diseases, or adults for that matter. So yeah, but you're also much more qualified than I am. From Dorothea, Donald doesn't know the Pledge of Allegiance. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, he does not. All right. I just want to thank you super stickers and people who donate to our channel. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, William. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Mariana. You guys rock. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, The World's End, who says, Marion, you people in chat give me hope in times that almost feels hopeless. Yeah, thank you. I feel the same way. Thank you, Haya77771, one of our most frequent people donating to the channel, who has this question. Do you have those clips on Fox of the appointees on another media other than yeah, well, you know what? Big show, lots of we had to deal with pulling stuff from lots of sources, so I get it. But, information is information. But I hear you. Kimberly, thank you. And you say thank you for standing up to the shithead in chief. My pleasure. How could I not? From Gary, thank you, Gary, who says, keep up the great work, Mary. Well, I have a lot of help, but I will and we will. From Violet's Drummer, thank you so much. From Vera, thank you, Vera. That's very kind of you. Same to you, JJ, who says, I love this. I've heard this before. Who says, Mary, you're the Marilyn Munster of the Trump family. Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you for that. That makes me feel good. The only thing I will say, though, is that the Munsters were fucking awesome, right? Fred Munster rocked. Like, he was one of the best dads on TV. But I understand the spirit of what you're saying, so thank you. Thank you, Lori in Washington. Thank you, Katie, who thinks I'm wonderful. Thank you. So are you. Thank you, Max. Oops, I skipped one. Thank you, Solar. At what age did you realize the rest of your family was crazy? I'm not really sure, but I always knew they were awful and mean. So, the diagnostic stuff came later. Thank you, Maxine, who says, thank you, Mary. You're welcome. Thank you so much, Matilda. And it's a wrap. Thanks, guys. Diaphragmatic breaths and all. Have a wonderful evening. We will be back. I think it's Thursday. Yes, we'll be back. We have a very comprehensive video on the plane crash and Republican the Republicans, Donald jumping to conclusions about the cause of the crash, of course, and Donald's, I don't know, there's not a word to describe how awful that press conference is, but I dive into it, and of course we talk about the actual facts of what's going on. So please check it out. I think you'll get a lot out of it. It's a very, very important topic. So that's dropping soon, and we will have videos throughout the day tomorrow, and of course Mary Trump Live at 6 o'clock. Yeah, 6 o'clock Eastern. In the meantime, everybody, thank you also to the moderators. It's a huge day. I should have thanked you guys at the top of the show. There was so much going on. We had 3 live streams going on. We had people who probably shouldn't have been in the comment section making your life difficult, but you prevailed, as you always do. Thanks for everybody. Your comments are amazing. And of course, thanks to the team, Mercedes, Lexi, Brian, Dennis. We'll be back tomorrow. So please, in the meantime, everybody stay safe and be kind. Have a great night. Bye.